Fyodor Dostoevsky, one of the most complex and profound writers in world literature, delved deeply in his vast body of work into the essential question of human existence. Human beings are entities that are permanently immersed in a search for meaning in their lives. This reflection appears with particular emphasis in his novel, The Brothers Karamazov, first published in 1880. The phrase that states, "Man is a being who seeks to find meaning in his existence," is found in Book 2, Chapter 6, under the title The Grand Inquisitor, a masterful section that reveals the core of Dostoevsky's philosophical concerns. In this work, the author keenly and profoundly reflects on the most transcendental human concerns. The phrase in question encapsulates Dostoevsky's view on the intrinsic nature of man, a being who not only seeks to survive, but also to understand his place in the world, the why of his existence, and his relationship with others. This impulse, this need to find a purpose, is present in all areas of human life, from religion and philosophy to love, art, knowledge, and the relentless search for truth. In some way, Dostoevsky reveals that human beings are marked by an existential hunger, a primary need to understand the meaning behind their lives, both personally and collectively. But beyond this existential reflection, the author goes further and points out that human life is not only a search for meaning, but a constant struggle between suffering, uncertainty, and the need to transcend. Through his characters, especially in the case of the Karamazov brothers, Dostoevsky delves into how this need for meaning can manifest painfully amid despair and contradiction. Without a doubt, human suffering and the constant search for answers to the reality of life and death are central themes in Dostoevsky's work. The work notes from Underground is perhaps one of the clearest reflections of the author's existential concerns. In it, an anonymous narrator is introduced who defines himself as the man from underground, an alienated, bitter being deeply dissatisfied with society and with his own life. This man finds himself trapped in a cycle of self-loathing and a profound disconnection from the world around him. He lives in a small, miserable underground apartment in St. Petersburg, isolated from other people, without friends or meaningful relationships. Through his internal monologues, the work reflects on nihilism, alienation, freedom, and the search for meaning. Through The Man from Underground, Dostoevsky critiques the emerging philosophical and social trends of the time, particularly nihilism and existentialism, which questioned morality and the meaning of life itself. This character is a paradigmatic example of how the inability to find meaning can lead to an empty and miserable life. Although the man from underground constantly complains and fills himself with great ideas and projects, he is incapable of carrying them out. This internal contradiction, which reflects his heartbreaking inability to act, is one of the fundamental pillars of his misery. The constant promise to act, to change his life, to carry out something significant, becomes a cycle that never materializes. At the core, this man feels trapped, a prisoner of his own thoughts and reflections, without the ability to transform his suffering into something productive. One of the most important lessons that Dostoevsky offers through Notes from Underground is the warning about how inaction, living in a constant state of passivity and contemplation, can lead to the crumbling of one's own dignity. The man from underground sees himself as someone incapable of action, someone who wishes to change his life, but has no strength to do so. This is a clear reflection of what could happen when we surrender to emotional and psychological paralysis, to constant indecision, to the inability to act. This man feels insulted by a small action from an acquaintance and swears that he will slap him in the face to restore his self-respect. He takes a carriage to where he believes his acquaintance is, but when he arrives, the man is nowhere to be found. Faced with this minor obstacle, the narrator immediately gives up. The narrator had explicitly stated several times that this slap was the only thing that would restore his self-respect. Yet he gives up at the slightest inconvenience. He holds himself in such low regard that he no longer cares about respecting himself. Therefore, Dostoevsky's warning for all of us here is as follows: have faith, confidence, and respect for yourself. Sitting down and promising to do something even when you know you won't carries the risk of eventually causing self-contempt, and that is a price no one should be willing to pay. Thus, the central teaching that Dostoevsky leaves us through his works is clear and forceful. The search for meaning in life, although essential, cannot remain confined to the passive realm of idle contemplation and endless reflection. Life, as Dostoevsky understood it, is a call to action, a call to transcend our existential anxieties and translate our internal struggles into meaningful and tangible efforts. To exist is not enough. We must act upon the world and ourselves. Without action, without stepping out of our own personal underground of inaction and self-imposed isolation, we risk being consumed by the very despair we seek to understand. Thus, Dostoevsky warns us that without the courage to confront our inner turmoil and the world around us through decisive, concrete actions, we are destined to remain trapped in the depths of an existential void, much like the man from underground. This vital lesson underscores a profound paradox of the human experience. While we are all bound to search for meaning and purpose in our lives, we can only truly find it by engaging with the world actively. Thought alone, however deep or philosophically rich, will never be enough to guide us toward fulfillment or inner peace. The more we linger in our mental labyrinths, lost in endless cycles of self-doubt and indecision, the more we distance ourselves from the very answers we seek. It is in our actions, in our willingness to make decisions, to engage in the struggles of life, to put our beliefs and desires into practice, that we find not just meaning, but also the path toward self-realization and growth. Dostoevsky's characters, particularly the man from underground, serve as stark, cautionary tales. They embody the danger of passive reflection, of the comfort found in intellectualizing one's problems without ever taking the first step toward change. The man from underground is a prisoner of his own mind, someone who constantly promises himself a better future, yet never takes action to create it. His life is defined by this tragic inertia, where thought alone leads only to deeper despair and self-loathing. Dostoevsky reveals the stark truth that the more we delay action, the more we alienate ourselves from our true potential, reinforcing the barriers between us and the life we could be living. Ultimately, Dostoevsky implores us to recognize that life is a dynamic and unyielding force, and we must actively engage with it if we are to find any meaning. Meaning cannot be abstract or merely philosophical. It must be lived, felt, and acted upon. The search for purpose is not a passive journey of endless rumination, but a proactive challenge that requires effort, risk, and commitment. The man from Underground's tragedy lies in his failure to act, not because he lacks the intelligence to understand his plight, but because he never moves beyond his intellectual musings to shape his reality. As we reflect on Dostoevsky's words and the struggles of his characters, we are reminded of a crucial life lesson: to transform our thoughts into actions, to take responsibility for our own existence, and to actively seek meaning not just in the abstract, but in the choices we make and the lives we build. We must not be afraid to confront the chaos and suffering that inevitably come with existence. It is through these very challenges, when we face them with the courage to act, that we discover not only who we are, but who we could become. In the end, Dostoevsky offers us a sobering yet liberating truth. The key to overcoming existential despair is not found in avoidance or passive thought, but in the willingness to live intentionally, to act with purpose, and to find meaning in the pursuit of a life that we have the power to shape. To take that first step, to break free from the paralyzing cycle of indecision and inactivity, is not just a moral or philosophical victory. It is the only way to truly live, to experience the fullness of what it means to be human. Through action, we transcend the limitations of our own fears and doubts and enter into a life where meaning is not a distant concept, but a reality forged through the very choices we make each day. In this way, Dostoevsky not only challenges us to confront the darkness within, but to rise above it by embracing the light that action can bring.